So for those of you that joined us with the original Into the Dream event that we had back in April that kickstarted this thing, you'll recognize Sonia from Africa Tour from before. She did a presentation that day on a little bit of taste of different parts of the continent of Africa. Today, we asked her to drill in on certain countries, and we may well ask her to come back for other ones. And by the way, in the chat box, I would love to hear if there's certain destinations in particular you would like to hear about for future presentations in Africa. But for those of you that don't know, Sonia Africa Tour is our main go-to person for Africa. She's just incredible in everything that she does. And she's very, very knowledgeable for various countries with fabulous connections all over the continent. Sonia is actually in the middle of the night for her. She's got up after a couple of hours sleep and agreed to do this for us. So we really appreciate it. Tanzania, by the way, is one of my personal favorites. Well, my personal favorite for Africa, particularly for safaris. I was fortunate enough to finally do my dream itinerary out in Tanzania a couple of years ago. And it was everything that you could possibly imagine and more. And I did do that with Sonia, and it was absolutely fantastic. We also picked Tanzania because Tanzania is one of those few countries that are currently open and receiving visitors from the United States as well as other countries. So Tanzania is something that really, honestly, you could get on a plane and go tomorrow. Just to give you an idea as well, I've been looking at airfare because I'm looking at going back ASAP. And I was finding, for example, out of Chicago for $850 round trip, including all the taxes, into Kilimanjaro, which will put you right slap bang in the middle of where you want to start the best safaris. There's also Dar es Salaam and some other gateways right around that pricing. That pricing is good for travel in August, but I also went as far forward as May and June, and you can find airfare at that price for travel in May or June as well if you're not quite ready to pack your bags. So anyway, that's why we chose Tanzania today, and I am going to hand you over now to Sonia.
Thank you, Cheryl. I really, really appreciate. I'm going to turn my video off, and I'm going to be starting with the presentation. So, oh my goodness, let me just turn that off. Antivirus. Right. Thank you, everybody, for obviously joining us on Tanzania today. I am going to be focusing on the safari side of things, with obviously some of the diving, and then towards the end, if there's any specific questions, then obviously I'll answer all of that. And again, if anybody needs to hereafter have any other specific presentations you'd like us to do on, for example, a specific diving destination within Tanzania, I'm obviously happy to do that as well. So just very quickly, obviously, Africa, most people has got a dream to come to Africa. And one of that does include the big safaris. There's a lot of adventure to adventure sport, outdoor sport, and obviously with Deep Blue Adventures, they specialize in the scuba diving. So we do all those sort of safari packages, but it doesn't mean that you have to obviously come just to dive. There is so much other things that you can combine with your diving, making it a full travel package, from covering for families or non-divers, etc., etc. So Tanzania is a beautiful country. As Cheryl said, it is, you know, it's just got so much to offer. It's obviously very well known for the wildebeest migration, which is the picture on the right-hand side with the hot air balloon that you can see. And that is literally pretty much all year round that you can just see masses and masses of wildebeest and zebras migrating. And with that obviously comes all your species like your lions and cheetahs and all of that following. So a lot of, it's a very action-packed safari. You can see from the pictures at the bottom as well. And then obviously Tanzania is also well known for climbing Kilimanjaro, the bottom left-hand picture. And with that, again, that is something that you can go and climb Kili, do your safari, and still you can also combine it with your diving. So that just gives you a little bit of a taste of what you know, Tanzania is all about. And then of course with Africa comes culture, an extremely interesting nation with very colorful beads, and you'll see there's some more pictures up just now. They wear a lot of red clothing and just beautiful photographic opportunities when it comes to the cultural side of Tanzania. So just on the next slide, just to give you a little indication, is that obviously with the flights, you fly into Kilimanjaro Airport, into the Arusha area. And with that, as Cheryl touched based on that, there are a couple of airlines that fly in from the US. And with that, either New York, Chicago, Atlanta, or Washington, there are flights either via London or Europe directly into Kilimanjaro. Ethiopian Airways is also one of them that have normally got very, very good rates, and they're actually a very good airline. They go from New York into Addis for a quick stopover and then directly into Arusha, so that is also quite a nice option. And then another one that's come in the last year or so, quite reasonably priced, is Kenyan Airways. And with that, also out of New York for a quick stop over Nairobi, and then from Nairobi down to Arusha. So pretty much this is your area where you fly into most of the time. And as Cheryl also mentioned, there are some other airlines that also flies then into Dar es Salaam. Arusha is preferable. It's easier. The Dar es Salaam airport, the connections onto the islands and onto Arusha is not always that easy, and it's not the most tourist-friendly airport to be sitting around in at all. The Northern Safaris, which is the most popular for visitors to Tanzania, or should I rather say first-time visitors, is that what they call this Northern Safari area. So most people would fly into Arusha, they would go into Ngorongoro Crater, and then they would finish off for 2 or 3 nights up in the Serengeti. Mostly only when people come back for a second or a third time into Tanzania would we then start suggesting these sort of southern game reserves, which is Selous, beautiful, beautiful area as well, Ruwa, and all the other game reserves. So we're going to focus tonight on that Northern Circus safari, which brings us to the question of the migration. A lot of people say, oh, but the migration only happens in sort of June, July. And if you look at the migration, it actually happens all year round. It is just that they are on different parts of Tanzania as well as on the Kenyan side. So when you come through to us and you say, I want to travel in, for example, October, and I would like to see the migration, then obviously we would focus on getting your lodges with your safari within that area where the bulk of the migration will then be. So as you can see from the slide, they literally start from sort of this eastern side of the Serengeti in Tanzania. They go through then to the western side. They cross over the Grumeti River, which is pretty much all the National Geographic films that we all see where the wildebeest cross over the river with the crocodiles attacking them. That is the period of June, July, where they're crossing over this Grumeti River and then going up over into Kenya. So yeah, you know, I've been to safari in January, and masses and masses that you still see of the migration. So it is possible to see the migration all year round. And then, as I said, this is the highlights of the Northern Safari. You fly into Arusha, most people spend the night, especially after flying in from the US and a long flight. Depending on the time that you have available for safari, we might then take you down to Tarangire National Park, If you are limited with time, then we take you directly to Lake Manyara. I'm going to cover that shortly, where you see all the big, beautiful pink flamingos in that. We go into the Ngorongoro crater and then finish off on the Serengeti. Just while I'm busy talking with this, as you can see from the map, Tanzanian safari is very, very different to, for example, safaris in Botswana and South Africa. With Botswana and South Africa, we mostly fly or drive to a lodge. You book in for 3-4 nights into a lodge, and you would do all your safaris based from the lodge. You'd go out in the morning and come back for breakfast, and then go out in the afternoons again. With the Tanzanian and the Kenyan safaris, it works quite differently, especially in the start of your safari. So, for example, when you leave Arusha and we're driving to Lake Manyara, you're already on safari. So the distances are vast. That first night at Lake Manyara, your second night or third night even at Ngorongoro crater, you are traveling and you're spending one night. Of course, you don't have to if you have time on your side, but just to explain to you that there are distances that needs to be traveled. And also with Tanzania, within these parks, there are no fences. So from the time that you drive out of town and that, you're already on your safari. Also, just to explain the difference between the Tanzanian vehicles and then, of course, the South African and Botswana and all the other safari vehicles is again due to the distances being traveled. So as you can see from the right-hand side vehicle, you have windows that slide open and they pop open. And most of the vehicles have also got these pop-up roofs where you can then stand up and have a really, really good view. Whereas with the South African or Botswana safaris, as I mentioned, those we go from the lodge out for a 3-hour drive and come back again. So those vehicles are very different. Obviously, the vehicle on the left-hand side is not quite made for driving on long distance and dusty roads. So that is why the Tanzanian vehicles are very, very different to the other vehicles. Just a very quick point on our vehicles that we use in Tanzania. We got fully Wi-Fi in all the vehicles, as well as charge points for cameras and cell phones and all of that. So that is quite a nice added feature that we do with all our safaris. Tanzania covers such a big range of accommodation. You can go budget. Most of the budget, like the wildlife lodges, are very well priced. You also have these sort of glamping, what they call them, which is not quite a little mattress on the bed and a tent. I mean, a mattress on the floor, but you do get a basic bed. You have ensuite shower and a toilet. So those sort of budget mobile camps are also very popular in Tanzania, and a lot of them are mobile. So when it comes to the Serengeti side of your safari, those camps move according to the time of the year in order to capture the highlight of where the migration is taking place at the time. Also within the budget range, as I've mentioned, is a lot of your wildlife lodges. And then, gosh, it goes right up to these most glamorous, beautiful ensuite tents that you get, as well as, of course, just absolutely exquisite lodges. One thing I know, and I know Cheryl will agree with this, when it comes to the Ngorongoro crater, there are a lot of lodges in and around the crater, and then you've got a short little drive into the crater. But it is really, really worth it looking to upgrade to the 1 or 2 lodges that are on the rim of the crater. It is a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and you just have the most magnificent view from the rim. So that is something that we do recommend clients look at, is to upgrade to the lodges that are on the rim of the Ngorongoro crater. Sorry, just to obviously go back, with regards to the camps and the safari and traveling and all of that, a lot of the time when we do go on the safaris, you have the options. So with your first day of travel to, for example, Lake Manyara or the Ngorongoro crater, and even the crater, we suggest that clients take a packed lunch with. So when you leave the lodge for the day, you come back to spend the night there, but you're out for the entire day on a safari. So instead of going back and coming forth because of the distances, we obviously take a packed lunch with. And the same goes for the safari in the Serengeti. Even if you are at the same lodge for 3 nights in the Serengeti, we often go out for the day with a packed lunch. And again, we use safari outfitters that will stop somewhere nice for you, where you are then able to obviously sit down and have your lunch. Also, just one thing to point out about our safaris is that we always only quote on private safaris. So it's not, even if there's one of you or 2 of you, you are quoted on a personalized safari. We will never ever stick you in with 2 other people, unless of course you've asked for possibly joining a trip, but that is not the kind of trips that we run. It is all very much personalized and tailor-made according to the time frame, your budget, and obviously what you would like to see and the time of the year that you're traveling in. We would then suggest a safari package that suits that the best. Moving on from the safari, to touch on the diving side off the coast of Tanzania, you've got 3 islands. You've got Zanzibar Island, you've got to the north Pemba Island, and you've got to the south Mafia Island. Zanzibar, I'm going to start with, is quite a large island. It's a very vibey town. It's very well known for spices. The beaches are beautiful. The diving pretty much happens up in the north here and also on the eastern side of the island. Personally, I prefer the diving in Pemba and Mafia Island as opposed to Zanzibar. It is just a personal preference. I just find that most of our really avid diving clients from the US, if you're going to come to Africa, you want to do at least a 8 to a 10 dive package. And for that, I just prefer Pemba and Mafia Island, that it just offers a lot more dive sites and a lot more diversity than what we find in Zanzibar Island. Pemba Island, absolutely beautiful diving. It is really, really superb. A lot of drop-offs and walls and a lot of soft and hard coral. If you have a look at the picture on the left-hand side, I don't know if any of you have seen the underwater room, Pemba Island. That room has made Pemba Island famous. But that is one of the lodges that we do use in Pemba. And a lot of clients opt to spend 5 nights in the normal accommodation, and then just purely for the experience of it all, to obviously spend a night or 2 nights in the underwater room. It is something very unique and different. So you've got this sort of living area at the top of the water, and then you've got this amazing underwater bedroom under the water. So yeah, that is something completely different and exciting. There's 2 or 3 resorts that we like to use in Pemba, and obviously we can discuss that in more details with those that are obviously interested in Pemba Island. And then Mafia Island, also absolutely beautiful diving, marine reserve, well known for whale sharks in season. beautiful, beautiful corals as well, and really spectacular diving. In Mafia, we don't have the sort of more luxurious lodges like we have in Pemba, but there are certainly a couple of sort of 2 or 3 also sort of good options, but as I said, not as resort style as what we have in Pemba Island. So those are the 3 islands of Tanzania that is easily combinable with flying into Arusha, doing your diving on either 3 of the islands, coming back to Arusha, and then doing your safari to finish off your trip. However, there are many other diving destinations that we can combine your Tanzanian safari with. I'm going to touch base a little bit more on that. I just want to, I see the next slide is on the time of the year with the time frame. So just for those divers that are more specifically interested in specific, for example, a lot of people do go to Mafia Island for the whale sharks. It is obviously seasonal, and again, that whole area obviously also well known for sharks and that. So again, if you are interested in seeing something specific, we will then guide you on the best time of the year to combine with your safari. Just from a weather point of view, obviously the sort of the cooler, drier months from a rain point of view are July through to October. So the temperatures do drop a little bit, but we are obviously quite close up to the equator, so it's not the winters like the US gets. Yeah, April to June, it can be a little bit windy and rainy. I've personally been there in April and May, and yes, we have had days where it was a bit windy and rainy, but we've had other days where it was still glorious and hot and swimming in the sea and all of that. Right. As I said, there is so many other places to combine with your safari. So we've just looked at this area here, which is the Serengeti, and flying into Arusha from here. You've got Zanzibar here, but right on the doorstep as well, we've got the Seychelles. Really, really beautiful diving as well. Not so much the inner islands. I mean, the diving is nice, but my absolute best diving in the Seychelles is on the outer islands of the Seychelles. Alphonse, Estove, Cosmolido Islands, absolutely unbelievable diving. Estove is very well known. Jacques Cousteau filmed part of his movie there, diving the wall of a stove. So yeah, there's so many options where, you know, that you can combine your safari with. The same looking at Madagascar, up in this Nosy Be area, up in the north, and that also very, very, very good diving. Looking at the Corimba archipelago, which is the northern section of Mozambique. There's a couple of islands off there, Kuala being incredible diving as well, also part of a marine reserve. You've got Vemezi Island, Matimo, all beautiful, beautiful, unspoiled areas and really good diving. And the same goes down with the lower part of Mozambique, from the Bazaruta area. You've got Benguera Island and a couple of islands off here as well. And then, of course, one of our very well-known packages that we've called the Great Migration, and that is combining your, sorry, let me just go back. That is combining your sardine run, which happens to be June, July, with your Great Migration Safari, which is middle of June to middle of July. So those 2 combinations of nature, being the wildebeest migration and the sardine run migration for divers, have been an extremely good seller for us, as it is obviously the highlight of it is that time of the year. And then also just to touch on the Uganda and Rwanda gorilla tracking, a lot of our clients, because you're quite already up in Tanzania and you are coming a long way, a lot of people then hop over into Uganda or Rwanda to go and do the gorilla tracking. And it's easy to combine with the Tanzanian safari. And in fact, a lot of our clients also do their entire safari in Uganda. You don't have to do it in Tanzania either. So people who specifically want to go and do the gorilla tracking, then stay within Uganda. We can do the big five safaris in Uganda. I've got a very good agent that does a 10-day trip in Uganda. Starting with the gorilla tracking, doing the chimps, going up to this area here, which is Murchison Falls, covering a whole lot of obviously culture, and then spending 3 to 4 days doing your safari. So that is also another option. So even if you decide to dive in Tanzania, but you don't specifically want to do the Serengeti Ngorongoro safari in Tanzania, you can then easily hop over to Uganda to go and do your safari in Uganda. And that is a very brief touchdown on Tanzania and the safari side of it. You know, there is so much to cover with all the different destinations and the different lodges and all of that. But whatever your interests are, whether you are a birder, whether you want to focus rather on photography, whether you have got a diver and a non-diver, we can literally combine any package for you and tailor make it specifically to your specific requirements. And yeah, I think, Cheryl, if we can open Cheryl, are you there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for that, Sonia. We appreciate it. A lot of good information there. I don't know if everybody's kind of aware of just how much that Africa or Tanzania has. It's and I keep saying Tanzania is the English way of saying it. Sorry, I'm stuck in that mode all these years of being taught Tanzania in geography school many years ago. So I stumble the other way. Yeah, I mean, we've heard of the Big Five. I think everybody has heard of the Big Five, and definitely that alone is a reason to go. It's spectacular, but I don't think everyone is aware. Just, you know, chimpanzees, gorilla trekking, things like that are options as well. Just to note, most of these safaris, and I would recommend, like Sonia said, the amount of like ground that you're covering, so you see so much more from a vehicle, but you can actually have the option of doing 1 or 2 walk-in safaris if that's something you really want to do as well. So that's kind of exciting. Mm-hmm. And those vehicles are really very cool. When I went, I was there for about 14 days. It was our vehicle for the entire time, and that's the kind of itineraries that Sonia sets up for you. So it was our driver, our vehicle. If you left anything behind or you wanted to leave anything behind, you could. You had charging stations in there, Wi-Fi, as she said, so you can be streaming and Facebooking and sending everything home to the family right there from your vehicle. But we had the same guide the whole week, so he knew what kind of floated our boat and what didn't. And I mean, I'm still friends with him on Facebook and met his family and everything. By the end of that 2 weeks, it was absolutely incredible. So even though you're moving, it is a very personal service in that respect, and it's just absolutely spectacular. So we're opening up to questions. If you want to raise your hand in the chat box, if you want to type anything in the chat box, if you're shy, we'll unmute you if we can, and allow you to talk directly to Sonia. If you're shy or you're unable to be unmuted, then go ahead and type it in the chat box for the Q&A, and we'll ask Sonia on your behalf. And Brent Emery, you're on.
Thank you, Cheryl. Sonia, 2 questions on the diving.
Yes.
I know it's a hard question to answer, but approximate water temperatures?
Okay, so we all work in Celsius.
That's
So
fine.
during summer, you're looking at anything from 24 degrees Celsius to 28 degrees Celsius.
Okay.
In the winter time, it can drop to between 20 to 24 degrees Celsius.
That's not bad at all.
No.
I'm going to assume, but I have to ask the question, what do we do with our diving gear while we're on safari?
That's a very good question, and it's a good question. Thank you. So we like to do the safaris at the end. Number one, it gives your dive gear, also a little bit of your wetsuits and stuff, a little bit of time to dry. And we've got facilities in Arusha where we can leave the dive gear. And as Cheryl said, your guy who picks you up to take you on safari and take you back to the airport again is the same guy. And they just go and pick up the gear before they drop you off at the airport. So absolutely, there is a facility that you can leave all your dive gear in Arusha while you're on safari, and you don't have to drag it all along.
Wonderful.
And there's usually overnight laundry as well at the facility. So if you leave your dive gear at Arusha and it's safe and it's secure, you pack, like I had everything in a backpack, and I packed really light and easy. So I would just pull my stuff out. The lodges, even though they're beautiful, you know, you're on safari, so it can be very casual what you pack. And then I would just, we did usually, I had about 14 nights. So I had places where I was able to take the luxury of 2 or 3 nights in the Serengeti, a couple of nights in the crater. So the first thing I would do is drop off my laundry at the hotel when I checked in. They would do the laundry. It was very inexpensive, very fast. And by the time I was packing up, I was packing fresh clothes back in my backpack to go to the next place. So you can pack and travel very light and easily.
Absolutely. And that's actually a very good point as well, Cheryl. A lot of clients opt to, instead of driving from the Serengeti back to Arusha on that last day, a lot of clients opt to take the smaller charter flight, which is normally those caravans. They 10, 12-seater planes. And to shorten the trip, especially if you've got a long trip back to the US. And on those flights, normally the maximum weight is 15 kgs. And as you are on safari, you literally need 2 or 3 pairs of pants or shorts, 2 or 3 shirts, and obviously your camera equipment and that. So it's easy then to have a little backpack and just wash and go as you go along.
Brent, did that answer all your questions?
Yes, it did. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Pleasure.
Okay, right now we don't have anybody else with any questions, but Sonia, I was wondering, you know, everybody has heard of the Serengeti. Of course, if somebody hasn't, or you're not sure why the Serengeti would be on your list, please let us know. But, you know, Ngorongoro crater is something not everybody has heard of. Could you tell us a little bit more, describe Ngorongoro crater for us?
Okay, so with the crater, obviously you've got, it's a massively vast area. The safaris, normally the way that we work it, especially if you've left Lake Manyara in the morning, you're driving towards the crater. So normally in the afternoon, and I'm talking now, let's talk about a 2-night safari in the crater. So your first night would be spent driving from possibly, let's say, Lake Manyara. You're coming along to the crater. You would then drive along the rim of the crater. So up at the top, you still got often all your big 5 animals, you've got all your birding and all of that. But being on the rim of the crater, it gives clients the opportunity to look down into the crater, where there is obviously quite a big lake area. The next day, when you do your full day down into the crater, you then go down from the rim into the park, where, I mean, on several occasions when I've been there, I've often termed it's like being in a zoo, because literally everything is there. The hyenas are lying on the road. You've got your rhino there. And of course, being on the lake, certain times of the year, you do get all your big pink flamingos and that there. So the crater is just this massive gathering of animals and certainly the big five within that bottom area of the crater. And that's why it is also nice to actually stay on the rim, because you do get that beautiful view down onto the lake area within the crater.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it's like the Garden of Eden is how I honestly thought it was like the Garden of Eden. It was spectacular, and
yeah.
And it really does look, this picture down on the bottom right, I mean, you're having your meals overlooking that crater if you're staying at a lodge on the crater. So, I mean, right from the start, when you're having coffee first thing in the morning till sundowners at night, you are viewing spectacular wildlife. So I know not everybody has heard of Ngorongoro Crater, so I kind of wanted to share what that is.
What it is, yes, yes.
Penny Johnson, you're on with your question.
Yes, I was wondering if you could discuss a little bit more about flights to and from Pemba, either from Kenya and or Tanzania.
Okay, so there are, let's say pre-COVID at the moment, because obviously there might be a couple of changes coming along a line. I'm sure you're aware that many airlines have gone into business rescue and all sorts of things. So normally there's coastal aviation. There are sort of two other local airlines that we also use, and a lot of them go connect into Zanzibar. So you would fly from Arusha to Zanzibar into Pemba or down to Mafia. And the same, there are also some ones that go directly from Pemba. So it just depends on the time of arrival, which airline you're flying in with, which airline we would then connect you with. But normally coastal aviation, we would then get you into Pemba or Zanzibar.
Okay, thank you.
Mary Sulis, you're on.
Hi, yeah, I was in Botswana in 2008 for a Big Five after a habitat build, but this area looks absolutely amazing. Something I noticed was the picture of the tents didn't have like the mosquito netting. Is this not really a malaria area because of the altitude?
You do get certain times of the year in that, but obviously with these pictures that I've got in here, there isn't tents, mosquito nets, but for the time of the year, especially the mobile tents and that, they do put mosquito nets up. They do.
Okay, and then because I was just wondering, because I know I had to take the malaria medicine like before I got there and stuff, so I didn't know if that was the same there based on CDC.
Yeah, look, malaria in Africa is pretty much
Everywhere?
the whole of
Okay.
Pretty much, yeah.
But
okay. your Botswana areas, especially down in the Okavango Delta, it is a lot more waterways and a lot more water than what we're seeing in the Serengeti and that. So yeah, the Botswana side of it, I would say there are a lot more mosquito areas than what there is on the Serengeti side of the safaris.
And then switching to diving, about probably like either Pemba or the Mafia.
Mafia Island, yes.
So are those like boat rides, or how many like dive? How does the dive work for the day type thing?
Okay, so the boat rides in pretty much the whole of the east coast of Africa. We go out early in the morning, so you'll wake up, there'll be a cup of coffee or some tea. You would then kit up, you would go and do your dive, come back to the lodge, have your breakfast, and then go out again. Typically, we use the rubber ducks, so you are on and off the boat with a backflip onto the boat, and then normally this coming back on, the skipper would obviously take your gear first and then jumping back on. But pretty much all the diving off the coast of East Africa is off rubber duck boats.
Okay.
And most of it is 2 dives a day. So you either, if it is a time of the year where there's sometimes wind in that, and especially if there's only a few people on the boat, then a lot of the dive operators would go out and do a double tank dive and then only come back later for sort of a late brunch breakfast, or you would then do the dive, come back, have breakfast and go out again. So most of the diving, you would pretty much only get 2 dives in for the morning. Some destinations will allow you then, providing on wind and that you go out a little bit later to possibly do a 3rd dive. But it's pretty rare. Most operators only work on those 2 dives for the day.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Okay, I don't know if anybody else has any other questions. I don't see anything in the chat box or any raised hands. I'll give you just a second if anybody else has any other questions. Real quick, Sonia, same thing. I mean, even as a diver, I'd heard of, switching. It's not Tanzania, but it is, you mentioned doing the great combo, the great migration combo, which is awesome. Can you tell us a little bit more about the sardine run for those that don't know? As a diver, I'd heard of it, but I thought it was all just about the sharks. And it was only once I learned more about it, it was this whole spectacular phenomenon. So could you share a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So with the sardine run, we normally say that it's obviously nature, we can't always predict it, but generally speaking, it starts from round about the beginning or the 2nd week of June, and it carries through right until approximately end of July. Again, it is something easily that a non-diver can do. It can be a boat experience as well. Often you actually see more from the boat than what you actually see underwater. It is actually also more of a snorkeling experience than what it is a dive as such. So besides the sardines obviously going crazy, if you're lucky enough to get onto a bait ball, you've got thousands of dolphins pushing from underneath the bait ball. So they're pushing all the sardines up to the surface in order to get them all together, and it makes it a feeding frenzy for them easier. And then at the same time, you've got sharks coming in on the sides on this bait ball now, because very nicely the dolphins have pushed all the sardines up to the surface for them, and they diving in on the side. And then on top of it, you've got all these birds dive bombing from the top. So often when you're sitting on that sort of 3, 4, 5 meters of water, you actually have to be very careful of these birds, because they're coming in to dive bomb to eat as well. So even for a diver to sit off that bait ball on about 5 meters, to be able to watch sharks, dolphins, we've often had seals in there. You've got whale season at the same time, which is your humpback whales, and that comes through that time of the year. In fact, there's a couple of footage photos and stuff that I can also send through to you, Cheryl, from last year's sardine run, where this whale actually came right up next to these divers. Incredible footage. So you don't have to be a diver just in the boat to see it. Being on the boat, hundreds and thousands of dolphins, birds, whales, lots of other marine activity in that as well. So it really is just a phenomenal experience that for any diver is obviously an incredible experience to go and see that once of a lifetime, once a year phenomena. But certainly there is more than just what it is for a diver.
Right. And could you give us an idea how hard or easy it is to get between Tanzania, like if we're going to do the great migration, just how that transfer would work?
Okay, so the easiest with that would be to fly in and out of Johannesburg from the US. From Johannesburg, you would then obviously, there's 2 options. You can either fly into Durban, which is a quick 50-minute flight from Johannesburg, and then we do a transfer by vehicle. So a lot of clients do stop over for a night or 2 in Umkomaas or Protea Banks to dive with sharks and that there. If you drive straight from Durban Airport down to the Port St. John's area, which we prefer to use for the sardine run, then you're looking at about a 4-hour drive by road. Alternatively, if you don't want to fly into Durban, you fly into Umtata, which is also about an hour and 15-minute flight. And from Mthatha, you then only have about an hour's drive into Port St. John. So that is quite an easy connection flying into Mthatha with South African Airways or South African Airlink. And then the same would be to fly back to Johannesburg and then get your flight up to Arusha from Johannesburg.
And how long would you say that? Sorry, I don't know what's going on there. How long would you say that takes to get from Johannesburg to Arusha?
Your Johannesburg to Arusha flight is about a 3-hour flight. It's about a 3-hour flight, yeah.
So it's not overnights or anything like that. It's a very easy change.
It's an easy flight. There are, again, we're expecting some changes coming in with airlines, especially I think once tourism opens, the flight schedules might not be as regular as what they obviously have been, but certainly Kenyan Air as well. So you fly Johannesburg, Nairobi. Some people opt to overnight the night in Nairobi just to experience something different, and then into Arusha. A lot of the Kenyan Air flights are overnight. There are some overnight flights there, but again, there are options. It's again something that we can look at depending on the flight availability.
And I've actually done the overnight in Nairobi. Mine was unexpected, but for anyone, a way to build that in is there's actually, for those of you who've seen it on Nat Geo, various documentaries, there's an amazing elephant orphanage right there just outside of Nairobi that we can set you up if you do have a planned stopover. That you can go and see this infamous baby elephant orphanage, which I am sad I didn't make it, but I know everything about it through online.
A lot of clients also like to stop in Nairobi and just go and spend a night or two at Giraffe Lodge. That's also something that also Nat Geo, and there's a lot of social media on that, where you basically sitting having your breakfast in the morning, and you've got this giraffe walking around the lodge and sticking its head through to have a slice of your toast. So a lot of people also stop off at Giraffe Lodge for that. Yeah.
So it honestly is, it's time and money notwithstanding, it's your imagination and what it is that you're looking to do. It really is, as you can see, an incredible destination. You can see why it has my heart. The only other thing is, Sonia, if you could go back real quick to that slide where you had the seasons listed. Somebody's asking to see the seasons.
Sure.
And for anybody that, a couple of you have asked for a copy of the PowerPoint. I have that. So if you haven't already, if you want to shoot me your email, either in the chat box, or if you want to email Cheryl, CHERYL, at deepblueadventures.com, or if you can't remember my name, info@deepblueadventures.com. I can email you these slides with the map and with the migration and the seasons, because these really are some informative slides. So I hope that helps there. Well, it looks like we don't have any more questions. So Sonia, I know, what time is it there?
2 a.m.
At 2 a.m. So I'm not going to keep you. And she's doing it on no wine, because right now South Africa's way of dealing with Corona is 0 alcohol for the last 4 months. So
terrible.
This woman can't even have a Bloody Mary in the morning, or an Irish coffee, or a glass of wine at night. So without any other questions, I'm going to let you go. I really appreciate this. It's, as you know, it's seriously at my heart. So thank you for staying up and for sharing this with us.
No, absolute pleasure, Cheryl, and thank you for the opportunity. And any questions, please just feel free. Always here to assist.